welcome to Nerd Talk. I'm Pixie.
I'm pyrosim.
And I'm Snake.
And we just keep switching up our hosting rotation. I guess, Pyro and I are really the only constants.
I don't have to be here, guys.
You do have to be here because you saw our movie this week.
So did you.
And I'm here, just like I have to be.
Alright.
You see, he's just trying to deny that he saw it.
Every single person who ever saw Man of Steel is obligated to be on this podcast. The box office was terrible.
Nobody saw this little thing. It was really under the radar kind of thing.
No advertising.
No, nothing.
Alright, so Man of Steel. We saw it. It was a movie about Superman. I bet you couldn't have figured that out.
It was not directed by Christopher Nolan, despite the fact that he was on the producer role, and that when I was talking to people around me after seeing it, they were like, oh, I'm surprised to hear that about a Christopher Nolan movie. Now, when it faded to black at the end, it said Zack Snyder, and it was a Zack Snyder movie all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Although you cannot deny that there were big hints of feeling like Dark Knight in a Christopher Nolan movie.
Maybe in, like, the cinematography and the camera angles. They got lots of shots from weird places.
Nolan did help write it. That's the thing.
Yes, I recall he was one of the writers.
Ooh, I'm disappointed to hear that, because
David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan.
the screenplay was terrible. I'm gonna go ahead and say that.
IMDb credits Goyer with the screenplay and Goyer and Nolan with the story. I don't know what the distinction between those is, but there you go.
Well, let's just get it out of the way. What are our three different opinions of the movie?
I thought the action scenes were kind of cool, if a bit pointless, and I wasn't super thrilled about the ending. Are we gonna spoiler tag this?
I think so, yes.
Hey y'all, we're about to spoil the heck out of Man of Steel. If you haven't seen it and have any intention of doing so, you should probably do something else for the next, 20 minutes?
Some amount of time.
Might take us a little longer to rage on this.
Okay.
Spoilers. Henry Cavill has big muscles.
So,
Sure.
yeah, I guess if you want some eye candy then, I guess, but...
Okay, so I'm going to start off with a totally irrelevant and small complaint. The main government official dealing with this worldwide crisis throughout the whole movie was a 3-star general. Not like the Secretary of Defense or the President. A 3-star general. What was the deal with that?
Budget cuts?
Fair enough. The world is in danger. We could send out this guy.
They just figured he was less important and therefore more expendable? I don't know.
They wanted to get that guy from Law & Order SVU? I don't know.
I'm sure some DC Comics fans are gonna write in and be all like, it was because of super totally clear reason if you've been following the last 60 years of continuity or something, but I'm a Marvel girl. I can't help it.
Yeah.
Man, if you are, like, deep in the comics, then the scene where I just wanted it to turn into comics in this movie is there's one where Clark Kent, as a younger boy, is standing in front of a dog wearing a cape,
What
and he
was
doesn't
that
know he's
about?
Superman yet. I don't know what it was about.
Okay, I have a problem with that because Superman was the first superhero. Who is he imitating?
True. He's just like, I have a thing on my back.
What was going on in his head?
I have no role models to be role modeling after.
What person is young boy Clark Kent pretending to be here?
Maybe Jor-El encoded it in his DNA alongside the entire Kryptonian repository.
Which, I don't know what the heck is up with that MacGuffin either, but...
Well, they had to get something to forward the plot along to.
Yeah, the problem I have with Superman is it's just boring.
It was boring, and that was the main
from a narrative
problem.
standpoint, Superman's story is boring because he's basically Space Jesus. Only without the suffering and dying part.
Yep.
It's just kind of like I'm gonna chill around with my broskies and do magic tricks, and that's basically it.
Pretty much.
When you've got super breath, which admittedly wasn't in this movie, but
Well, also, it's, you got something weird going for you when your worst enemy is a glowing green rock and a red flashlight.
but that's in general.
Yes, that's just more in general.
Specifically relating to this movie, was not super convinced of the conflict. Was not super convinced that Henry Cavill's Kal-El was particularly bothered by it.
No.
Dude was not emoting for anything. He would get some scenes really, really right, and then you'd be like, yeah, this is the Superman I remember watching on the animated series, and this is cool. Or he's just like a super cool, really good-hearted dude. And the problem is this movie kind of treats him like Batman, where it's super tragic and really dark and battling inner demons and stuff. And
Superman doesn't have
high
emotional
stakes.
problems.
And Superman is just like this really chill dude, just genuinely is a good person. Is part of what makes him really boring, honestly, as a character, because, well, the character flaws is where drama comes from.
Mm-hmm.
They incite conflict. But, so when you're just cool with everybody, that's not really, there's nothing going on. So part of the problem is, like, they're trying to, like, make him really kind of, I don't know, they tried to insert some angst, and they're trying to, like, have these high-stakes morality things, and, like, death and chaos and gra, and it basically, it feels like they're trying to write a Batman story with a Superman skin on it.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember particularly, what was it, a Justice League cartoon that I watched?
Probably.
Where Batman is, like, has got this contingency plan that somebody gets a hold of, where he's basically got a way to shut down any single one of the Justice League members, including Superman, because he doesn't, that's the only way he feels safe and comfortable enough to work with these people, is if he knows that he can take them out if they should go rogue, because he does not trust them not to. And that's part of what this felt like to me, is the place where Batman and Superman differ is that core personality trait, where Superman just legit trusts everybody. Like, he doesn't say that just to be nice, he legit is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of bothers me a little bit, that this one kind of goes in another, this movie kind of goes in another direction. And I know I'm dancing around stuff a bit, even though we gave a spoiler warning, but I guess that's just my way, but...
Well, what it seemed like they were trying to go for in this was taking hints from the animated series, in that Superman's biggest conflict didn't come from exterior problems, i.e. anything that might actually hurt him or kill him, like Batman, but more from internal ones, feeling of, should he use all these powers, and it's really right for him to be so godlike when he just, as core, wants to be a normal person, but also still wants to find out who he really is. So it's a bit of an inner conflict, and just not so much of angst, just of trying to find out where he fits in the world. So it's more like he's trying to put limiters on himself, not believing that he shouldn't be all he could be, and that's what this movie tries to do with Kevin Costner playing his surrogate father, Jonathan Kent, trying to tell him to hold back his powers because he'll be seen as a freak, or that everyone will be terrified of him. The only problem with that, through most of the movie, it didn't really feel like he was all that conflicted with using his powers. Even at the time we were supposed to get that sense, it's hard to get that feeling from what he was doing, especially right after he finds out who he is.
It's like, I'm not supposed to use my powers, but I'm gonna lift a bus.
I don't want to beat this guy up. I'm going to passive-aggressively, quote-unquote, smash his car with a bunch of tree trunks. Or telephone poles, or whatever.
I'm not sure how passive that is, but sure.
That's why the air quotes. But, yeah, it's almost like you could see what they were aiming for. They just didn't quite follow through with it.
So is it possible to frame Jonathan Kent as one of the larger villains in this movie? Because the line he's pushing is constantly that if you expose yourself to the world, then disaster will follow you. You will be treated like a freak, and society will collapse due to the knowledge of aliens, and therefore you have to remain hidden. So, Clark remains hidden completely, right up until the point where Zod shows up and broadcasts the fact that, yes, there are aliens, and they have superpowers, on every television in the entire planet. And so, all of Superman staying hidden was totally for naught, including the part where he let his dad die.
Well, his dad
for
told
just about
him
nothing.
to die. Or his dad told him to let him die, which was kind of weird.
Although they
Right.
Which feels like suicide to me, doesn't it? Because he's all like, I know this dude is perfectly capable of saving me, but I'm going to tell him not to. Seems like suicide.
Now again,
A lot like suicide.
So he just killed himself in front of his son.
yeah. Now again, that
That seemed kind of scummy to you, anybody else?
well, it seemed
Absolutely.
It seemed like I could see what I could see what they were aiming for. I could see what they were trying to aim for, of how almost trying to give Kevin Costner's character
the self-sacrificing martyrdom.
given this martyrdom, like that's what they were trying to aim for. It's just a particular
totally
way
fell short.
it fell short of what they were aiming for. They went higher than they were aiming higher than they could actually aim at.
And an interesting part of Kevin Costner's character dying is that every human character, they're on an interstate and a tornado drops, and every human character had gotten to shelter, and Jonathan Kent goes back out of shelter to rescue a dog.
Because it's a Nolan movie.
Right. And then he himself gets killed. So it was almost capricious, the thing that he put himself in danger and then would not allow himself to be saved from danger for. And then because I've said the word dog, I'm going to go back to the scene where he was wearing a cape and staring at the dog, and I was really hoping that he would take off his cape and put it on the dog, and then it would be Crypto the super dog.
See, that would have been brill.
That would have been going back to the whole campy, lighthearted feel all over again.
So, my core problem with most comic book movies right now is that every single one of them feels a need to be an origin story, with the exception of probably The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, because they reboot these franchises very often, and they want to appeal to...
Well, that's because you had Batman Begins acting as the origin story.
And Batman Begins was probably the weakest of that trilogy as a result.
That's a whole other argument in of itself, but please continue.
So... For ourselves, at least the people who are probably listening to this podcast and the people who are recording it, we know Superman's origin story. We knew it going in. And there definitely is an audience of 12-year-olds for whom this is their first Superman story, and I don't think that we should never tell an origin story again, but I do think there's a lot of interesting things to explore outside the origin story. So I think this material is kind of tired to start with, and that leads me into my complaint about the screenplay. Which is that the number one thing that I hate when a movie does is repeat itself. And this movie told about the death of Krypton like 3 different times, in 3 different ways, in like 15-minute sequences each time. One of which was literally a hologram of Jor-El just standing a talking head and telling the Superman origin story to you. Which, like, Film School 101... Movies are a visual medium. Make something happen on the screen more than a talking head. So, boring material, boring visuals. What little narrative there was repetitions of the same trite stuff. And then any time that it was not those 3 explanations of the death of Krypton, was a lot of fighting. So what did you guys think of the fighting?
I have to admit...
The action scenes were shot and cut well.
I absolutely love the fighting scenes.
The effects were cool.
Yes, and everything really felt like you were really seeing 2 superpowered gods going at each other. And it really moved smoothly in between when you would have an actual actor and when you would have a CGI. Because sometimes when that'll happen, you could see, oh, it's gone to a cartoon. Oh, back to real life. Oh, cartoon again. But in this one, everything flowed together really smoothly, and I really liked it. So they had a good fighting engine, put in gaming terms.
Yeah, they blew up a lot of cool stuff.
Oh, yes.
One of my favorite scenes was when Superman tackles Zod through a gas station and through the pumps, and then the pumps all explode.
Why not?
The tragic gasoline fight accident.
This is Zoolander.
Yes.
Anyway.
They'd be like, what is this, a planet for ants?
Ants.
And let's please not get... I'll end this right here.
The files are in the computer.
Well, I will shut this podcast down right now.
I will turn this car around.
If you two keep quoting Zoolander. I will stop this right now.
Favorite building destructions.
I will send a virus to your computer there, Pyro. You stop it right here.
You're gonna have to first learn to write one, but I mean, so it'll take a while.
I know people.
I can probably help you with that.
Anyway, you were saying...
One of my less favored building destructions was when they fly through a grain silo, and then instead of, like, just a hole in the side of the grain silo and a bunch of grain spilling out like water from a faucet, which would have been an amazing thing, the grain silo explodes, which is a little confusing, because there's not much in a grain silo that causes it to explode.
Jebediah had a secret meth lab in there, too.
That must be. So,
it's all natural.
You'll notice that the things that I've said so far have been people flying through things. That's because this was almost 100% people flying through things.
I have another bone to pick with this movie, if I may.
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
It does not seem to treat its female characters very well.
Ah, yes. This was another poor
Martha
choice.
Kent's basically just a generic American mom blank slate, despite the fact that she's in most of the movie.
Yeah.
She's just kind of like wallpaper. Just doesn't really do anything.
Odd trivia, Diane Lane was the first cast role on this movie.
Lois?
No, Martha Kent.
Okay. Oh, Diane Lane, the actor's name. Okay,
yes.
I was moving on to Lois Lane, and you made my brain switch gears here mid-thought, and I got confused.
It's cool.
Okay, I'm okay now. I thought I was having a stroke or something. So Lois Lane, while admittedly she's not totally useless, she does do like the You see her using like her journalism skills to track down all the people connected to Superman. You see her going through with the projection of Jor-El's help escaping
that
from the
scene
ship.
Was my absolute favorite because if you want to suck up to me as a movie producer, you have to make characters behaving extremely competently in high-pressure situations. And so if somebody says, pick up that gun, I want that character to have that gun picked up within 10 seconds. And she did that. And I love that.
Yeah, I have to agree.
It's just like, turn your head. It was just like, go. But yeah, so
Right.
That was cool.
All that was quite good. And as a side note, I thought Russell Crowe's Jor-El was a good choice.
Yes.
He was pretty cool.
I thought that was an inspired pick. And also and while going back on casting with Lois Lane, can I just say that Amy Adams, not the person I would have picked.
She's got kind of like a girlish face. Am I the only one who noticed?
Not fully grown up. And she, I mean, after seeing her in things like Muppets and Enchanted, I can't really take her seriously. I'm sorry. That seems a mean thing to say, but she seems to be in something that should be in stuff that's much more lighthearted and not so trying to be serious, I guess.
So Lois Lane, we counted, gets saved by Superman by him flying and catching her while she's falling. We counted 3 times.
We counted.
In that specific scenario where she is falling from a great height and he swoops up and catches her, that happens 3 times.
Uh-huh.
Probably going for some
Not
chiropractor.
counting the part where in the scout ship she gets stabbed by a drone and then he has to stare at her torso in order to prevent her from bleeding to death.
Yeah.
It's, laser vision.
That's just
In 143 minutes, he has to save her 4 times, at least.
So, in that scene with the scout ship, it is very confusing because there's this flying drone adversary that's just kind of wandering around. Superman comes into the scout ship. He doesn't quite know what's the deal. And so he sees this drone. He just stares at it for a bit, and then the drone shoots a tentacle out at him. And then he's like, hey, I'm not going to put up with that. And he rips the tentacle off. And then the drone just loses interest and wanders off. And so he goes and does his thing with the command key. But then Lois Lane shows up, and she gets on the scout ship. And then she sees the flying drone, and she's like, my goodness, this thing is flying. I'm going to take a picture of it, which makes sense. And then you'd think Kryptonians, with their advanced technology, would know the difference between a flashlight and a weapon, but apparently flash photography registers as a threat to this drone. So the drone does the exact same thing it did to Superman, with no provocation, mind you, for Superman's part, and shoots a tentacle out at her. And then Superman tackles it and wanders off. But it's like, I don't know that this drone was really doing anything with any directed purpose. Like, it was just floating around, and then, I don't know, I see a thing. Maybe I'll stab it. That's all I got.
Well, to be fair, it's also
wander off.
Well, to be fair, it's also been there a couple millennia too. So maybe a few wires got crossed or something at some point. It was just, you know what it was? It was the lowest endangerment device. That was its only purpose.
Yep.
That's what it was. It was
otherwise known as the LDE or LED. LED. Oh my god, that actually totally works.
There you go, LED. The lowest
mixing
endangerment
up
device.
things now. I'm getting stuff backwards.
But yeah, that was the entire purpose. It was a Kryptonian device made specifically to endanger Lois Lane so Superman can save her for the first time. But yeah, that was rather weak sauce also.
So Zod's motivation in this film is
I'm not done.
Hang on, we still got more on this.
Because there's one other character that I need to mention. The fact that I can count all the female characters using 3 fingers is kind of bothersome. Yeah. But you've also got Feyara Ul. Am I pronouncing that right? Probably not. Who is like the second in command to Zod, and she like goes around and hits things and stuff. But she's a bad person. And so you've got Martha Kent, totally powerless and got no personality. You've got Lois Lane, who's got a little bit of ability, but she's totally overwhelmed and basically keeps getting written into situations that she's totally helpless in. So she, of course, has to be rescued. You've got the intern who gets a building dropped on her, and 2 men have to rescue her. She's totally helpless to do anything about it. You could have just as easily put that bald guy in that same spot, and you wouldn't have damseled another woman.
She is both totally right, and also I cannot tell any receding hairline white people apart, because when we saw Now You See Me, there was some receding hairline white guy that I thought was the same actor as Coulson from The Avengers, and then I thought this guy was one of those 2 guys, and it's just a third white guy with a receding hairline. I can't keep them all straight.
That's a new kind of
and
profile
then you've got this other Kryptonian chick who is the only empowered female character, despite the fact that she's still, taking direct orders from Zod, so she's still doing what a man says to some extent. But she's got her own superpowers, and she kicks ass and she holds her own in a fight against Superman, and that's kind of cool. But she's evil. And so what does this say? The only women who have power or who are allowed to seek power or acquire it have to be evil?
We could even take it a step further and talk about Superman's mom, who was only in the opening scenes.
And even then didn't do anything, just kind of sat there passively while her husband was killed. And then Zod apparently didn't bother with trying to kill her because, she's just a woman.
I was just trying to add on to your list here. I fully agree with you. It's quite sad, really.
To the extent that Feora has power, she doesn't especially have any agency. Like, she barely talks and never makes a single decision.
It's all quite almost Shakespearean the way she speaks. How we are evolution, and evolution always wins, and that's her badass term there. She was quite intimidating, I'll give her that.
She is basically the same character as Ursa from the Richard Donner Superman movies. In fact, in the comics, I think Ursa from the Richard Donner movies was adapted as Feora. Feora was pre-existing, and they've been the same character all along, and her name just got changed for no particular reason. So Zod's motivation in this movie is nominally that he wants to restore the glory of the Kryptonian race. Like, he's military cased. He was genetically bred to ensure the survival of the Kryptonian species, and that is in danger, and so he wants to make more Kryptonians and make a new Krypton. To that end, he has this terraforming machine, which can take some planet that was not Krypton and give it the atmosphere where Kryptonians can survive and thrive. And the only part of the puzzle that he's missing is the list of Kryptonian gene sequences that Jor-El stole prior to the destruction of Krypton. Did he steal the only copy? I'm not sure why they didn't have backups of this. But
they apparently did not.
Apparently not. So he needs that, and he knows that it went off with Superman because he saw that pod get launched. So that's why he's here. Eventually, he finds out that the gene sequences are just embedded in Superman's body. And so I feel that at this point in the movie, Zod and Krypton and Superman could have a conversation that goes like this. You want to terraform Mars? Yeah, I do. Let's both fly to Mars together, using our ability to fly through space.
And then can I, take some of your blood or skin cells or something to get all those genetic sequences that you have hiding in there? Because you have to be able to read that DNA, because you know that it's there to begin with from the other blood sample you have.
It's like, can I just get, a saliva sample? I don't need much. It's not a problem.
Well,
but they already took a vial of blood from him when he was captive. So yeah, I don't get it. What I also don't get is the, you guys could, live on Earth with the humans together, and he'd be like, that would be mildly inconvenient to adapt like you did, even though I did it in a matter of 15 minutes.
That's also not the thing that bugs me, too. Well, the whole thing about Superman being able to fly, super strength, and all that stuff is because of the fact that Earth has a yellow sun and Krypton had a red sun. Traditionally. Now, in this version, though, it's suggesting that that it's not just the red sun, but it's also something to do with the atmosphere, because it's suggesting that once Superman is close to the giant machine that's supposed to make Earth like Krypton, it's supposed to make him weaker because it's making everything like Krypton. Now, if that is the case, if it's not just the sun, but also the atmosphere... Like how
somebody who hypothetically was born on the moon could not handle the gravity of Earth.
Exactly, but to a much more extensive degree. But if that's the case, here's the thing that confuses me. If that is the case, why does Zod want to change the Earth at all?
So that future generations of Kryptonians will not be able to fly and have laser vision and be immortal?
Exactly, that's the thing that confuses me. If he's trying to ensure the entire race of Kryptonians, what he should be doing is going to wipe out all...
It would be mildly inconvenient, even though he adapts that same day.
Now, if it was something else, if it was something like he wanted to take over the entire Earth so that all of Krypton could be immortal like that, that would be different. That would be a better motivation for him if his entire purpose was to make Krypton immortal. In which case, it shouldn't have been he was trying to change it so that the entire Earth was like Krypton. It should have been he was changing it so that it would be the same, but all the humans were dead. Now, that would have been a better motivation.
So, along Pixie's line of Zod becomes superpowered, at some point during the fighting, Superman damages Zod's atmosphere suit, and Zod is exposed to both the yellow sun and Earth's atmosphere at the same time. As a result of that, he gains psychic powers, X-ray vision, just ultra-sensory capacities that overload him briefly, and he's confused by all these sensory inputs.
Which was a cool concept, I think.
Absolutely. And so at that point, he's kind of temporarily disabled. This immortal villain is weakened. I can see through time.
Also, one other thing, though, as you were mentioning earlier, Pyro, that movies are a visual format. They didn't have to have Superman doing that little monologue of everything. Oh, you're taking it all in now, aren't you, Zod? Like, no, we don't have to. You have to tell us that. We can see it happening.
Also, you did that. Even that is kind of redundant. Because that's also kind of redundant. I mean, because we saw all of these same things happening from the perspective of like 9-year-old Clark Kent.
Right. There's a particular imagery,
having that fit in the school.
Mm-hmm.
That occurs
and then they kept
both
that
in the
same
school.
Imagery. That should tell us that we're not stupid.
Right. When you see like bones, like white bones on a black background, like X-rays in a hospital, you see them in precisely 2 scenes in the movie. When Zod is exposed to the environment and can't focus, and when they explained it the first time in the school, like Pixie said. So if you see bones, you should correlate those 2 scenes. But what Superman does when his adversary is temporarily disabled is he says, the solution to your problem, evil person, is to focus on individual things. I'm going to explain to you how to deal with this problem you have so that you are no longer weakened or disabled. Good work, Superman. Thanks for capitalizing on that.
And then, of course, you got the entire argument of Superman spent his entire life of being able to learn to live with it, but then Zod, having never had to live with it before, deals with it in less than 20 minutes.
They kind of did a thing with that. I don't know that I found it satisfying, but during the fight, they do a Batman-Bane thing, where Zod is like, you spent your entire life learning to focus, but I am military-cased, and I was bred to focus.
Yeah, technically they did explain it, but that seems a little bit weak.
Yeah, it was not satisfying.
It's like so easy for any Kryptonian to do, like, why is that a bad thing that you would need to adapt then? You did it in 15 minutes, surely the rest of what's left of the race can do it.
I mean, hell, what was stopping them from just
That would be
stopping
mildly inconvenient. It's like Zod's just having a tantrum. Like, that little speech he gives at the end where he's just like, this is my purpose, and without that I've got no purpose, and like kind of explaining his own motivations. It was like, yeah, I kind of feel bad for the dude. And then he's like, yeah, and then I'm gonna laser these people. So I guess that segues into that. Right.
The climactic scene of the movie, they're in like a bank, and there's some bystanders hanging around. And Superman and Zod have been punching each other, and Zod's like, I'm gonna take a break from punching you to laser these innocent bystanders. And so Superman grabs his head and is like preventing him. And they're struggling against each other, and Zod's trying to laser the people, and Superman's trying not to let him. And it's solved by Superman just...
And they're just standing there?
Not, running away. Like, okay, you can't run to
or ducking
screen
underneath it
left,
or whatever.
But couldn't you run towards the camera and thereby be out of danger? But, whatever. Indiana Jones logic. You can only run towards the boulder
rubble,
or
like,
away from the
behind
boulder,
them,
not left or
to
right.
the right of the screen. Yeah, there's some rubble to the right of the screen, and the laser's coming at them from the left. There's all this space in the middle here. This is where there's nothing stopping them from going, and then just kind of sidestepping that.
All this, mind you, is happening very slowly because Superman and Zod are struggling, so they, have time to implement this plan.
They could have done that and then made a sandwich, is what we're saying.
But that is really the biggest problem with the scene.
The biggest problem with the scene is he's all like, I'm gonna do it, no, don't do it, I'm gonna do it, no, don't do it, and then, Superman's all like, fine, and then snaps the dude's neck.
You would have saved so many lives.
Superman!
Someone go.
Superman kills Zod.
Superman! Kill the dude! Just straight up kill the dude! And if he was willing to do that, well then shoot. And they tried to be all like, no! And this emotionally affected him. But I don't... This is so not the Superman that we all know as just being an overwhelming force for good who does not freaking kill people. And 2, why didn't you just do that earlier then? Because, that would have saved a lot of time.
Yeah, this, implements some serious off-screen blindness, because Superman wants to save this family of 4 or whatever, but literally millions of people have died as a result of him not doing this, 20 minutes ago.
Superman's focus on one thing mantra, he seems to have taken way too seriously. In that he can only focus on what is directly in front of him.
He sees that family, but not anything else.
In front of me right now, and I can save them. Or, I can save Lois in front of me right now. This is just whatever he's doing at the moment is all he's doing.
Yep.
The thing that made Superman what he wasn't just the fact that he had such immense power, was the fact that he was focusing on the small picture in front of him, but also the bigger picture that he could always see. And the simple fact that he had all this immense power, but he still refused to actually kill. Because the difference between Batman and Superman is Batman can only kill in so many circumstances. Superman can kill in any circumstance. And that's exactly what he is. He's supposed to be a giant symbol for good in that he has the ability to do these things, but he doesn't. That is the biggest fundamental flaw in what they did here. Because if he is, as Pixie said, if he's willing to actually go this far, then what real threat is there left? If he is willing to go the ultimate way of just flat out killing his foe, then there is really nothing left to stop him.
You can't really make
Superman's
a Justice League movie.
Mom and apple pie and baseball. If Superman could just fly up here, snap your neck, fly over there, snap your neck.
It undermined what made him an interesting character to begin with.
We saw a couple of vans that were LexCorp, and so we're well, I guess if Lex gets too snippy, then just go over there, snap his neck.
Just solve this problem.
Yeah. I will say though, Michael Shannon as General Zod, I thought he did a great job. I really enjoyed him as General Zod.
Pretty decent.
He got a little over poetic at certain times, but overall, he had a good presence about him, I thought.
So, there's a scene where Zod, and I'm thinking about this because the acting on Zod is at least interesting at the part where Zod's been going around in this power armor the whole time, in this atmosphere suit, and Superman and Zod have been fighting for a long time. And then Zod just, flexes and rips off the rest of his atmospherically compromised atmosphere suit, exposing a bodysuit that is just like the one that Superman has been wearing this whole time. And, okay, I
don't know, it looked a little bit more like a ballet leotard to me.
It looked a lot like a ballet leotard. But, Samus has the power suit and the Zero suit, and you wear the Zero suit under the power suit, and because she keeps losing her equipment all the time, sometimes she winds up in the Zero suit, but really you want to be in the power suit whenever you can. A, why did he ditch that equipment? And B, why didn't Jor-El pack Superman a power suit?
What?
You just packed the leotard? You didn't pack all the equipment? Come on.
Well, the idea was supposed to be, I think, that the power suit was only to keep him from being exposed to the rest of the environment, but after he'd fully absorbed everything and had gotten to full strength, he didn't need
it's
anymore.
Still armor. That's kind of neat.
Well, yeah, but armor's not much good when you're facing someone that can floss with iron. But
yes. And I'm just going to totally steal this and segue into my other point, which is that armor is not much good when you are totally invincible, which is one of the things that made all of this fighting super boring to me, which is that for the hour and a half that they spent punching each other, none of those punches had any consequence, because they just don't take damage that way.
Yeah, it's like Superman's hair coif didn't get undone.
That's one of the other jokes, is they have an entire... Gillette has an entire campaign of people like the Mythbusters trying to explain how he shaves.
If these people's bodies were magic cards, they would say protection from punches, protection from being thrown through buildings. But it was nothing but punches and being thrown through buildings to no end. Also, I feel like the aftermath of all this fighting must have been tremendously expensive. I would want to be a construction worker with some skill on my resume after this. Scenes. Because I would be highly employable.
Yeah, but then again, after the Avengers, they said that they had done the most damage to any city in that one movie than most others. But also, here's one thing that I was a bit disappointed at. At that scene you were talking about there, Pyro, where he loses all of his armor and starts to float up slightly, and you see him in his black outfit. I figured if they were just going to go full on out, and this was just supposed to be, them owning up to being Superman, I was really expecting that would have been the perfect time for him to say the line. And we all know which line that would have been.
No, please tell me, which line is it?
Just think about it. Superman's kneeling down. Zod's doing this great big monologue about how he's trained his body and how then the armor starts falling off. And when the last piece falls off, it zooms in on him and he just shouts, "Kneel before Zod."
Yeah.
Oh, come on. It would have been fine. It would have been just a really quick throwaway. It would just said, "Kneel before Zod," and then punch. Then it just continued right after that. Don't make it a huge, big thing out of it. Just, he says the line, fight continues.
And that would have been a cookie.
That would have been an extra cookie, and I think people would have appreciated that.
You know, that would have been substance in this movie that kind of has very little going on. Like, I wasn't super into it in Star Trek Into Darkness when Spock yelled, God.
Yeah,
I was kind of into it. It was okay.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. But Kneel Before Zod would have been really good here.
It's just so well-known and widely... It's a well-known line, and I think that he actually could have pulled it off. I really think that Michael Shannon could have pulled that line off.
Now I'm really bitter that they missed out on that opportunity because I hadn't had that idea, and it's great.
Seriously, I was all prepared for it. I see the music gets epic.
It's like I'm watching him next to me, and he's getting excited. He's like, "They're gonna do it," and then they didn't do it, and his heart broke.
And seriously, it was almost like it was even this blank pause for a split second, where we're in the perfect spot to put it in. It's almost like they had it in there, but then someone crossed it off at the last second. It's like they wanted to put it there, but someone decided not to. Like maybe back with the Nolan's demand for realism or something. I don't know, but it would have been a great addition, I thought.
Very disappointing.
Yes.
Another line to take issue with, and this one was in the trailer, which is that shortly after that, Zod says, "There's only one way this ends. Either you die, or I do." That's two ways. That's two ways for this to end, Zod. That's not one way.
You should have said there's only one of two ways, but that wouldn't have sounded as epic, I guess. And unfortunately, they kind of gave Superman some weak lines too. There's one where he just flat out said, "You're crazy, Zod, and I'm going to stop you."
He's like, "Zod, you cray."
I don't know. It got a little. Sometimes you just can't think of anything epic. Apparently, like in Captain America, Red Skull says, "You don't give up, do you?" And he says, "Nope." Okay then. Like, farewell. How about you? That's what's same thing here.
So, in terms of blank
I don't know.
lines,
Any final thoughts?
No.
Blank lines and no emoting. Every single minute of this movie, I felt like I was watching The Matrix Revolutions and Henry Cavill was Keanu Reeves.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I think Pixie and I took a tally. It starts out with a little bit of Star Wars Episode 3, then it shifts over into Avatar, and then it goes over
like he was flying on an alien creature. Seriously, that was Avatar.
While running away from giant spaceships that looked exactly like the ones from Avatar. And then it goes into a little bit of, what we think, and then a little bit of Matrix Revolutions. And then it goes into even a little bit of, there was something else I forget, but
yeah, we're just getting like, this looks like X other movie, this looks like Y other movie.
Also, I'm just going to say this, Steadicam. I'm just going to leave that there, nothing else.
You have a budget, buy a track.
Anyway, that's okay, but that's all I've got left to say.
Man, this was like our longest movie review that we've ever done.
Well, because we actually saw it and we have very, very stern opinions about this. What we have shown is that Warner Brothers and DC...
It's got a lot of problems.
DC cannot seem to do anything but make a Batman movie. That's about it.
I mean, it wasn't like awful. It was not good, though.
It was...
And I don't see why a bunch of other people were treating it like the second coming, because it really wasn't.
No, it was... okay. It was but it's not fantastic. Stick with Marvel is what we're saying.
If your plan is to have a Justice League movie that competes with the Avengers, you're not on a good track.
Between Green Lantern and this, DC's got to do some major overhaul. But yeah.
What else has been going on in the world, Pixie?
Next.
So that was Man of Steel. The Xbox One has done a 180. Microsoft came out and was like, "We listened to your feedback." Well, let me pull this up. The president of Interactive Entertainment Business for Microsoft, Don Matrick, put up a post on Xbox.com that was all like, "Yeah, we listened to your feedback and stuff, and we made some changes." And so basically what they did was we went, "Okay, y'all don't like the DRM and the way we do our online stuff. We saw that after the huge outcry from E3. So basically it's going to work exactly the same as the Xbox 360 with a few minor exceptions. Those being, we get day one digital downloads now. Yay. And the console will be region free.
Yay.
Yay.
Any disc will work in any console. You're going to have your physical discs back, and they're going to work just like they do now. So it's still technically DRM, but it's DRM that we are used to and not the crazy amount of bullcrap that we got before. So,
So, I was kind of one of the more positive voices.
We did lose the family sharing feature.
I don't know if anyone was really dead set on that one at all. But
we kind of never figured out exactly what the family sharing feature was.
It was
like, okay,
you could share your, I think it was the digital copies of the game with up to 10 immediate family members.
Uh-huh.
But it begs to the question,
Like,
exactly how did you know we were family members?
Yeah, we didn't really get any solid answers about that. Maybe they had to register and be linked to your account for a certain amount of time. I don't know, but...
Maybe they had to be child accounts and not gold accounts. Maybe your shared library was your whole library. Maybe it was a subset. Maybe only certain games could do it.
Not that it matters now because the feature's totally gone.
Yeah.
Never gonna happen.
Doesn't matter anymore.
So, if you work on a nuclear submarine, this is great news for you, because if you're in, like, some situation where you're both really bored all the time and have no internet access, two things that both go hand in hand and happen very often to one relatively affluent demographic, which is the military. And I kind of want to point out that making a video game console...
and they're going to implement these changes via a patch released on day one, so you still need to be online for day one setup, basically, the first time you turn the console on. After that, it doesn't need to be connected to the internet for single player stuff, but...
Right.
So I guess as long as the military personnel trying to play this set it up somewhere with an internet connection?
Yeah, and that seems viable.
Yeah.
That's doable. Have it set up before you send it over or something, I don't know, but yeah.
If you're going to be buying a $500 console, then you can find a one-time internet connection eventually, even if you have to, like, take your console to Arby's.
Supposedly this is going to be able to take an internet connection from a tethered smartphone.
That would definitely be... Do you know something specific about that more than the fact that it just has a Wi-Fi radio, or it'll do that over USB?
I might be misremembering, but I think somebody asked about that in an interview that I was reading earlier today, and I cannot remember which one.
Right. Doing it over a tethered cell phone is the obvious way in a lot of circumstances, and it doesn't need to have any special functionality in order to be able to do that, because it's guaranteed to have regular Wi-Fi, and smartphone tethering just generates regular Wi-Fi. I have been mostly a proponent of the way that Microsoft proposed to do it. I mean, I always thought that it felt sleazy that, you know, what are some of the best-selling games? Name one genre of game that you would play on a video game console, most likely.
First-person shooters, RPGs.
First-person shooters. Probably a modern military first-person shooter. So we have these games that are about soldiers. The only people who aren't allowed to play them are soldiers.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I never really thought of that before, but you're right. I forgot that military are big fans.
Our buddy Paul, who's made appearances on the podcast in the past, is a vet, and they used to play the crap out of Call of Duty overseas, and he used to play specifically a whole lot of Fallout on... I think that was on his laptop, though.
So the reason that I liked what their plan was is because I am affluent. I am like a huge games enthusiast. If I purchase a game, then I am probably going to keep it, and I'm going to want to have that game 3, 5, 10, 15 years from now. And I never, ever, ever want to change a disk in a disk drive. But all of those things are still perfectly available to me. Like, my life has gotten no harder by this change.
And see, the thing is, games are so expensive that, by the way, there is just no reason to have digital downloads for games cost the exact same as a retail copy. None whatsoever. That's a load of crap.
Quite so.
Retail games have a huge marginal cost associated with them of printing a disc, printing a box, and shipping it to a store. And downloads cost only bandwidth, which is significantly cheaper.
So that is a load of crap right there, because they're making huge markups on that. So really, they ought to knock the price down on that a lot, and that would have solved a lot of these problems. Is if a lot of people would have been okay with a lot of this DRM if you made the games a lot cheaper, like Steam.
Right.
Nominally, not having that, you need to have that disc system in place so that people can take part in the used games trade, because otherwise, most people just cannot afford to be buying a $60 new retail game every week.
Okay, I don't have a console. I don't play console games often. My expectation with a new game, if it doesn't have Mario on the cover, is that if it comes out for $60, I will be able to buy it for $30 sometime within 60 days of the release. Is that true on consoles right now?
Not really. You can expect to... Okay, assuming it doesn't have Mario Space on the box, because you will never, even for a used copy, pay less than $25 for that at retail. Maybe if you go to, like, eBay and check the, like, used market there, like, without the middleman of a retailer like GameStop or Best Buy or whoever, you'll still be paying, like, GameStop, for instance, because that's the one I'm in most often, so that's what I know, will be charging, if it's a $60 game, they will be charging, like, $55.
Yeah, there's still
for used copies.
You can go to a GameStop right now and probably still have to pay like $50 for a used copy of Tomb Raider.
And Tomb Raider's been out for, well, since March, hasn't it?
Something like that, yeah. So
and it is June.
You're still
3 months old.
Yeah,
Let me see. Actually, I will look right now. If I may, get browser. Let's head over to GameStop's website and see how much a copy of Tomb Raider is right now.
Let's take a quick gander right now, because I think this is a good example.
I'm trying to imagine anybody who...
So it's been 3 months. It's now
Okay.
$29.99 for new.
It's $29.99 for new and $27.99 for pre-owned. Okay,
So yeah, it's still within $3 of the new price.
But yeah. But what's something else that came out not too...
Okay, what came out in the list? Animal Crossing came out on Sunday.
Animal Crossing will be its original
Yeah.
price.
Yeah.
'Cause
Let's see.
that's...
What came out...
What came out in the last, what was it, 60 days?
Yeah, 60 days, I said.
Remember Me came out...
That was on the...
That's still relatively new.
Yeah, it was within the last month. So it needs to be 2 months old, not 3.
Okay, I am looking at the perfect game on my screen right now, which is Dead Island Riptide.
Okay.
It came out, let's see, April 23rd, it's June 20th, so like 3 days less than 2 months. Steam says original price $40, current price $20.
On GameStop, however, buy it new is $49.99 still.
So it's still $50.
And it doesn't even have... And it does have a pre-owned one, but that's $44.99. So it's only $4. So it's only $5 less.
Again,
That hasn't...
retail will continue to charge just $5 under the new price for a used copy.
Mm-hmm.
That has an even funnier caveat that the day one console price was $10 more than the day one PC price. But the point I'm just kind of trying to get at here is that game prices are bananas, and that $60 is a huge amount of money. And games are very expensive to produce, but if you buy a $60 game, well, if a game company releases a $60 game, they do not nearly get $55 from every person who plays that game.
No.
Not even close to that.
No, not even.
Somebody who makes pretty close to that amount of money is GameStop. And for the purposes of looking at this is kind of a zero-sum game. You have GameStop, you have the developers, and you have the consumers. Any money that GameStop has, in any way, is money that either the developers or the consumers don't have and can't have. So the person who would kind of lose out from killing used games pretty hard is GameStop. And so all of that money would go to, well, most of it. Like, you'd still have some amount of margin on new games, and it's not big, but it's enough that you could have a place to go and buy a game if you didn't have a super fast internet connection. But all of that money could go to either the developers or the consumers, and that seems like it's probably a good thing. So, This is going to happen anyway with digital, but we'll see where it goes.
So, yeah. Retail, gaming, new gaming, trying to figure out the magical price number and timeline for all this is getting... Well, it's becoming a big nightmare, really.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
The magical price number is cheaper.
There you go. Well, so... I say that's a pretty solid bit of ranting right there. That's behind the Man of Steel and also the...
The 360.
There you go.
Sorry, I said 360. I meant the Xbox One going back to being like the 360.
We'd all like it just to be the 360.2.0 or something, but no, it's still not quite. I'm still not buying one. I'm still not going to get one. I'm sorry, just not going to happen. The fact that Microsoft even had these limitations in the first place is a frightening thought. And the idea of how quickly
if they can take them out with a patch, that means they could just as easily put them back in.
Yeah, for all we know, this could be just a clever ruse to let everyone know.
To get their stock prices back up.
We're not really evil, honestly.
Or their GameStop pre-order numbers, which were apparently like 20% of Sony's.
Yep.
Yeah. Basically, what I think should really happen, everyone should really be sending a big
Well, it was funny because GameStop was getting supplied with more slots for day one pre-orders for PlayStation 4s. Microsoft was not giving them that many Xboxes.
So they were sold out, but they didn't have that many to sell.
Yeah,
so
they wanted to be able to say, look, we
demand.
sold out of pre-orders without actually having the numbers behind it that Sony did.
Long story short, it kind of seems like Sony and Microsoft have switched places in this generation.
Well, Sony's no longer the most expensive thing out there now.
It's almost like Sony was, listening to everybody over the last few years, and Microsoft kind of hates everybody now. I'm sorry, that's a real simplification of the whole matter. There's much more to it.
What did Bane say in The Dark Knight Rises? Victory has defeated you?
There you go.
That's like a very good summary of the change from generations.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so I guess we're gonna have to shovel everything else into next week's episode, which is gonna be a couple weeks, because Snake and I are gonna be in California.
What? I shouldn't say that.
Beach Boys.
What?
Surfing.
Just shut up now.
Okay.
Anywho, so it's gonna be a while before the next episode comes out, but we will not forget you, and we will come back with more stuff.
Deadpool, the game is coming out, and that will probably be next time.
That's going to be awesome.
And also, we're gonna probably have to put out another episode of that Remember Me Let's Play.
Absolutely.
So, things that are coming. In the meantime, I'm Pixie.
I'm pyrosim.
And I'm Snake.
And you've been listening to Nerd Talk.